Okay, good afternoon. So let us continue the lesson. So if you remember, let me just recap you what we learned. We learned about how to solve this equation in general. Yes. Systematically, of course, A is considered not to be zero because I want to keep it quadratic. Yes. And we learned how we can solve this problem if C is zero. How can we solve the problem if B is zero? How can we solve the problem if B is not zero, C is not zero, but A is equal to 1 using factorization? We also learned how to solve them in general using ABC formula. And the formula we got, I want to write it down here once for you again. So here, in principle, we calculate an expression called discriminant of this, which is usually denoted by delta. And the formula I really recommend you to memorize. It's b squared minus 4ac. There are three possible scenarios going on. The one possibility is that you calculate delta. Delta is a number. It turns out to be positive. In that case, you have two answers for your equation. Let me write them just x. I have two answers, minus b plus square root of delta divided by 2a. And then one's the same with negative sign. It sometimes happens that you calculate delta and delta becomes 0. If delta, of course, becomes 0, then what is left for you is minus b over 2a. So the root of this equation is just simply minus b over 2a. And that is called the double root. And finally, in this case, that delta is less than 0, you do not have real solutions, let me emphasize here on real, let me put it in pair of brackets, because before you were supposed to study a little bit of complex numbers, but the school bracket has omitted that, I think correctly, and moved it to Math 4. So we will not study that part. So when delta is 0, you just say that no solutions. But in principle, no real solutions. What do I mean? It means that if you look in the set of real numbers, you will not find any solutions for your equation. But later in Math 4, we'll learn that we can extend the set of real numbers to a larger set, which is called the complex numbers. And then we will see that we will still have two solutions there. But they are not in the set of real numbers. Okay. This is the version that I use, but in Sweden, people usually use PQ formula. But before doing that, let me start with solving one problem for you here, and then teach you the PQ formula, and then solve the same problem using PQ formula, and then that's up to you to decide which one do you prefer. Okay, so let us solve this equation, 2x squared plus 13x minus 45. Let me see if I can... Now let me give you a better example, because I want to compare it with the PQ formula. So let me write... We can solve that one, of course, but let me just give you... Because when you divide by 2, you can use 1 decimal point, and that is not very hard. But 3x squared minus 5x plus 2 equals to 0. I want to solve this equation. And I myself always prefer when the coefficient x squared is not equal to 1, I usually immediately use this method. Okay, so what we do, first of all, let me do everything from scratch. The first thing that you need to realize are the values of A, B, and C, even though I really don't want you to write this. Don't get you used to the way of writing these things so long. So A is 3 in this problem, B is minus 5, and C is 2. Yes? I calculate delta with the formula b squared minus 4ac. This becomes minus 5 squared minus 4 times a times c. and calculate this, it becomes positive 25 minus 24, which is 1, and it is positive. So when delta is positive, it means that I'm actually facing the first scenario. So I have two roots. And x, I rewrite it again to memorize it. Minus b plus or minus a square root of delta divided by 2 times a. Then I go to my value. B itself is negative. There is a negative sign in the formula, so it becomes positive 5. And then you have plus or minus the square root of delta. Delta is 1 divided by 2 times a, which is 6. Yes? Square root of 1 is 1, so it becomes 5 plus or minus 1 divided by 6. Then I can break it into two parts. One, I choose the positive option, which becomes 6 over 6. And then the x becomes 1. That is one answer. Or the other scenario is I take the negative sign. 5 minus 1 divided by 6, which is 4 divided by 6. And I always prefer to simplify. I think it's more or less a have to simplify. And that is the exact value 2/3, another solution for this equation. Okay, I just teach you PQ formula to see. In PQ formula is a formula that gives this equation, tells you how to solve this equation. And it is called PQ formula because you have coefficients P and Q. Usually, so in PQ formula that I want to describe, you see that it is a have to. Let me write it with a different color. So this has to be 1. In ABC formula, it works both for the case that A is equal to 1 and not equal to 1. But the formula that you have for PQ formula only works if x squared, coefficient of x squared is 1. In that case, you can use this formula. If I remember it correctly, it's minus p over 2, and then plus or minus the square root of p over 2 squared minus q. Yes. Of course, this formula looks a little bit probably simpler. In this case, this is playing the role of your discriminant. So might be, of course, I haven't seen that in the book, but you can call this one delta, but the delta here would be a little bit different from the delta there. Of course, to prove this, you can start everything from scratch, but you really don't need to start everything from scratch. You can use ABC formula to prove PQ formula. But let me avoid that because I don't want to confuse you, but I really want you to learn how to use ABC formula to prove PQ formula. What you need to do, you need to choose A equal to 1. You need to choose B equal to P, and you need to choose C equal to Q and put them in this formula, then you get that one. Yes? That's one way to do that. Another way is just let us do it from scratch to refresh your memory a little bit because it's also important. And that is the method of completing the square. Okay? So if I want to do that, x squared plus px, I move q to the other side, it becomes minus q. Then I want to add a number to both sides, making the left-hand side a complete square. And do you remember the rule of thumb was to go to a scratch paper, divide the number p by 2, and then square it. When you square it, it becomes p squared over 4. This is the number that you have to add. Yes? So I add px, p squared over 4. I add p squared over 4 to the right-hand side as well. Okay, then what happens? If you don't mind, let me write here. So this becomes the complete square, which becomes x plus p over 2 to the power of 2. On the right-hand side, I can leave it like this, but because I want to get to the formula written in the book exactly, instead of p squared over 4, I write it as p over 2 to the power of 2 again. Okay? And then the rest is clear, yes? I am looking for x. I'm going to make x alone. I have to get rid of this power of 2 by taking the square roots. So when I take square roots, this becomes this. On the right hand side, this becomes that. But of course, plus and minus, and of course, if this is positive. Okay? And then I move this to the other side, and that is your PQ formula. So I want you to do consistently. Either choose this one all the time, or choose ABC formula. My recommendation is to choose ABC formula, because the weakness in PQ formula is that you have to have this coefficient equal to 1 first. And then, for example, if you don't mind, let me go back and solve the same problem, this time using PQ formula. Okay, so if I want to solve that problem, so here I want to solve the same problem, but the coefficient of x squared is 3. If I am going to solve using PQ formula, I have to divide everything by 3 first. And that's the problem. When I divide the first one by 3, that's okay, it becomes x squared. But the middle term becomes 5 over 3, and you have to live with it, yes? You cannot just approximate this, you have to keep the fraction, x, and then you have 2/3 equal to 0. And then if I ask you what is p, p is the middle number here, middle coefficient, and then q is positive 2/3. And then of course, you have this formula in front of you, which will be given to you in the formula sheet, and then you can find x. So it is minus p, which is positive 5 over 3. And then what you write is plus or minus, and then you have to write, I can do this in my head so it is easier, yes? 5 pi divided, sorry, p divided by 2. P is this number, divided by 2 becomes minus 5 over 6. Yes, I divide this number by 2, you have to keep the fraction form, and then square it, and then minus q, so it is minus 2/3. It's more or less the same problem, of course, but the only thing is that you have to work with fractions all the time. So then what happens, it becomes 5 over 3, plus or minus square root 1. This 1 to power 2 is 125 divided by 36, and then minus 2/3. And then you write 5 over 3 plus or minus. You take the common denominator between them. This is 1 times, it's 125. This is 12 times, so it is minus 24. I have made a mistake probably somewhere.
Yes,
Can you detect that?
Yeah, it's the 125, it's supposed to be 25.
Ah, yes, thank you. It's 25. Thank you. 5 to power 2, I don't know, for some reason I wrote. That's the correct. And then 25 minus 24 is 1. And then 1 over 36, and then you have a square root, so it becomes 1 over 6. But that is very strange. Ah, yes, another mistake I made with fractions. You see, this is p over 2 again. That's my mistake, sorry. I have to divide by 6. I have to divide by 2. Because you see, I have to divide p by 2 here and here. Now everything is okay, so it's not that bad. So this becomes 5 over 6 plus 1 over 6, which is 1. Another one is 5 over 6 minus 1 over 6, which is 2 over 3. You see that the answers are exactly the same. But you have to work with fractions. That is exactly up to you which one you use. And the good point is that both of them are in the formula sheets. You really don't need to memorize it. But when I am teaching, I always used to work with ABC formulas. So if you don't mind, I will continue solving my problems using that. Okay, more or less the lesson of quadratic equations is finished, but I prefer to solve some problems together, okay? Okay, so let us solve this problem together. So here, of course, this is not still a standard one. This is the standard one. You have to move everything to the left, but there is a mixture. Still, I don't know, is it a quadratic equation or not? Of course, I see a power of 2 here, but it might be the case that the powers of 2 cancel and then it becomes a single degree 1 equation. We have to check that, yes? Okay, so if I want to solve this, first of all, I have to simplify the equation as much as possible. So what I can do on the left-hand side, there's only one way for me to do it, is just to multiply things. So this becomes 5x squared minus 25x minus 3x plus 15. But on the right-hand side, it is better to use the identities, and that is the squaring rule, yes? It's a binomial, I want to square it. So it becomes the first one squared, which gives me 4x squared. 2 times the first one times the second one gives me 20x. The second one squared gives me 25. And the last one is just 19. And still I need to simplify the equation. So this becomes 5x squared. This minus 28x and 15. On the right hand side, this is alone. 20x is also alone. But this one and that one becomes 115, yes? Now I realize that this is indeed a quadratic equation. So I have to move everything to one side, yes? And let us do it in our head. 15x squared, 4x squared is moved to the left, it becomes negative 4x squared, and 5x squared becomes positive x squared. Okay, what is the next term? I have negative 28x here, I have 20x here, move it to the other side, becomes negative 20. Negative 20, negative 28 is negative 48x, right? And then what I do, I move 115 to the other side, minus 115, positive 15, it's minus 100, equals to 0. At this point, if you could guess the numbers whose sum is minus 48 and the product is minus 100, of course that would be faster, if there are such numbers, yes? Then if I can immediately recognize the numbers, probably I will avoid even using ABC formula. I don't know, can you guess? The two integer numbers, because other numbers are not easy to get, and I don't have the solution here, so I don't know if the numbers are integer. Just think a little bit. Can I imagine two numbers whose sum is negative 48 and the product is minus 100? It's very simple. It's simpler than you think, you know. I would think
50 and minus
50 and 2 are related, yes? Because the product of 50 and 2 is 100. Okay, how should I adjust the signs? I want to solve it using ABC formula, but I'm trying to say that especially when this is 1, instead of using PQ formula, I use this one. I think PQ formula is better for this one. But if you can guess those numbers, you can say that I can factorize it. I put an x here, an x there. I ask myself, I need two numbers so that the sum is minus 48 and the product is minus 100. It's not hard to see that one of them is minus 50, the other one is positive 2. Because the sum is minus 48 and the product is minus 100. And I am done. So this is the fastest way to solve this equation, because the answers are immediately positive 50, the other answer is negative 2. But let us just do some practice in ABC or PQ formula. So we can solve this using PQ formula. To be honest, PQ formula is better for this problem. Why is that? Because in PQ formula, you have to divide the middle term by 2. And because this 48 is divisible by 2, it's better. Yes? If I go to ABC formula, I have to work with 48, square it. But if I work with PQ formula, I have to just divide this. So I don't know. Here in this case, might be PQ formula is better. So in this case, let me use the PQ formula. So it becomes minus P over 2. So it becomes positive 24. Minus is in the formula. Minus is in the formula. I can't move it higher than that. So minus is in the formula, and I have to divide it by 2, it becomes this. Plus or minus, whatever this number is, you have to square it. 24 to power 2 is 576, yes? And then minus q, which is positive 100. So you see, it is much simpler in this case. So at least this is one example that shows that PQ formula is superior, yes? So could you, I don't know, then if you continue, this becomes 24. 20, so what is this number? Oops. But what is the square root of 676? Is it a complete square or not?
Mm-hmm.
Can you check it out?
26.
26? Okay. So then it becomes 24 plus or minus 26. And then as you see, we have two answers. 24 plus 26 is 50. I would write x again here. So let me write it in this way. So then one answer is 50. And the other answer is 24 minus 26 is negative 2. So the other answer is negative 2. And that's exactly the answer that I got here. But if I want to use ABC formula, then x is minus b. You see, plus or minus b squared. Then I have to work with this one squared, which is harder. Minus 4 times this times that, which is positive 400, divided by 2. So then you have to calculate this number, which in this case is harder than this one. So it is a good mixture of PQ formula and ABC formula. Whenever it's easier, you can switch to PQ. Whenever it's easier, you can switch to ABC formula. But this I leave it to you as an exercise. But again, you agree with me that this is the fastest way if you do not spend that much time in guessing. If it is going to be very long to guess, I would prefer to solve it rather than dating, yes? Okay, so let me write one more question here. And I want to wait for you to solve it. Okay, I would write two, one simpler one. And that's up to you which method you want to use to solve the problem, yes? Okay, so I will write two questions here for you. One of them, a very simple one, because I haven't given you time to think about these problems yourself. So this one, 7x squared minus 5x minus 2 equals to 0. That's one problem that I want you to solve. Another one is this one. Square root of 2x squared and then minus 2 square root of 3x. Yes? And then I will give you a square root of 2 at the end as well. Equals to 0. Yeah, that is a little bit more tricky, but that's simple. Yes? I'll give you a little bit of time to think about these two problems and then we solve them together. Yeah, please start doing it. Thank you.
Nej, men vi kan göra det också.
Okay, could you solve it? No?
Om det känns så till, lägga till 4 i.
Okay, so let me add a little bit harder ones, and then we can solve together. So let me, this is for you number 1, number 2, you continue, and let me write some more here. X to the power of, yeah, I deviate a little bit, I go to 4th degree, but these are special kinds. So in principle you should be able to solve. Yes. And then this one.
You can do that. Så där är det samma. Då ska jag skriva om det som 4 i minus 10. Förlåt, jag skriver detta squares. Så att punkter.
Yeah, these, you can also work on these two, and then after that we take all 4. Okay, what happened? Could you solve the problem? Yes or no? Okay, so let us see what's the problem. Okay, so the first one, definitely you should solve. That's an E-level question, yes. So let us use the ABC formula, especially for this one. I definitely use ABC formula. So here, what I calculate is delta is b squared minus 4ac, but b is minus 5, and I square it becomes 25. Okay, and then I have minus, if you get confused, write them everything down. So write them down, yes? 4 times a, which is 7, times c. c itself is negative 2. So then it becomes 25 plus 56. Yes, because minus 4 times minus 2 is positive 8, times 7 is 56. And that becomes 81. 81 is positive. So I will have 2 roots, yes? So the roots are minus b plus or minus the square root of delta divided by 2a. Minus b is positive 5 because b itself is negative 5. Plus or minus the square root of delta, we already calculated it, divided by 2 times a, which is 2 times 7, 14. But the square root of 81 is just, it's 9. So then I will have 2 solutions. 5 plus 9 divided by 14, which is 14 over 14. So x is equal to 1. And the other one is x equals to 5 minus 9 divided by 14. So it is minus 4 divided by 14. If I simplify by 2, minus 2 over 7. So these are the answers, yes? So that's actually a very simple problem, E-level question. For the next one, you shouldn't get confused. So you should do these things patiently if you don't know what to do. So what I write, a is square root of 2. Let me just be patient and write everything. B is minus 2 square root of 3. And c is again a square root of 2. Okay, so these are the things. This is very simple. By looking at the equation, it is in the standard form of a quadratic equation. So I read the coefficients containing the signs. If something is negative, you also have to include the sign. Okay, and then as before, delta is b squared minus 4ac. So b squared means this number. Let me be patient and write them. Minus 4 times a times c. Okay, what is the first number to power 2? If I have a product, this is a product, and I want to square it, I square each of the factors. I square minus 2, it becomes 4. I square this one, it becomes 3. 4 times 3 is 12. So this number is 12. Yes? And then square root of 2 multiplied becomes 2, and another 4 becomes 8. It's minus 8, and this is 4, it's positive. So it means that I will have definitely 2 roots. One root, so let me write both of them. I write the formula. So b is negative 2 square root of 3. Negative b becomes positive 2 square root of 3. Plus or minus square root of delta. Delta is 4 square root of 4 divided by 2 times a, which is 2 square root of 2. So the answer becomes 2 square root of 3 plus or minus 2 divided by 2 square root of 2. Of course, you can stop here, but I prefer to factor a 2 out. It becomes square root of 3 plus or minus 1 divided by 2 square root of 2. So then this 2 and that 2 are now simplified. What I get are 2 answers. Square root of 3 plus 1 divided by square root of 2. And the other one is the same with negative sign in between. So this would be the answer to this problem. So the roots of this equation are those numbers that you see here. I told you sometimes it is common to get rid of surds in the denominator. Yeah, it is not obligatory, so let me change my color. If I insist to get rid of this surd sign, so what I have to do, I have to rewrite this again and rescale it by square root of 2 over square root of 2. If I do that, first of all, I haven't changed anything, because the square root of 2 over square root of 2 is just 1. But now, square root of 2 multiplied by that becomes square root of 6 plus or minus. Square root of 2 times 1 is the square root of 2. And the denominator square root of 2 times square root of 2 is simply 2. That is exactly the same expression, but as I told you, usually people prefer to actually get rid of surd signs in the denominator. If you insist to do that, this is a better place to stop rather than that one, but that's also completely acceptable. Any questions so far? Okay, but now, this, yes?
On the question 3,
Yes?
shouldn't it be positive 13 instead?
Positive 13?
Yes, because...
I just write it from a book here. Let me see. No, it is written negative 13. Okay, but first of all, I hope that you agree with me. This is not the standard problem because that's power 4. And I told you that solving power 4, power 3 and power 4, still we have formulas to solve them, even though it is not in the high school curriculum. But from 5 onwards, in general, we don't have any formula. Yes? So solving polynomial equations become hard if we increase the degree. Okay, but now, what is your opinion about how to solve this? This is not one of those problems that is hard, even though it is a 4th degree polynomial, but there is a trick, and we have already learned the trick. Yes?
Take square root of both sides.
No. Be careful. If you take a square root here, that square root sign will not go here and there. Yes? So be careful. This is several times I have mentioned. If you have a squared times b squared, then you take a square root, then it becomes ab. But if you have square root of a squared plus b squared, you cannot write a plus b. I remember you made the same mistake in your exam. Yes, you are doing it still. So this you need to take it to get rid of this mistake. Yes, this is not possible. But you have already learned the trick. I'm talking about a general trick about these kinds of problems. You remember about what I said, auxiliary variable. So this is one of those things that you can introduce a new variable so that you make the problem simpler to solve. Yes? Can you tell me which one is suitable? How should I take the auxiliary variable? Yes, how should I do that? I introduce a new variable so that I hope that using that variable makes solving the problem easier. Can you see? Yes?
The variable should be x to the power 2.
Yes, exactly. So, in that problem, my goal is to solve this problem. But this, I would say, I don't know what name you want to give it. Let me call it t. Let t be x squared. Then t squared becomes x to the 4. Okay? And then when I go back in this equation, instead of x to the 4, I can write t squared minus 13. Instead of x squared, I can write t. And instead of 36, I just write 36. And this is better. Because the equation I started with is a 4th degree equation. The equation I am left with is a 2nd degree equation. And I can solve it, yes? Which method is preferable here? I myself prefer to use the factorization method. You don't have to. You can use PQ formula in this case very nicely. You can also use ABC formula. But can you use it? I want you to improve your skills in factorization as well. I ask myself, can I guess two numbers whose sum is minus 13 and the product is 36? And I always recommend you to start with the product. That is easier. Yes?
Minus 9 and minus 4.
Minus 9 and minus 4. Yes, that's great. So what I do, I would write t in 2 pairs of brackets, t equal to 0, minus 4 minus 9 as you said. Because the sum of minus 4 and minus 9 is minus 13, the product is positive. So that's correct. So then this means that this one is 0 or that one is 0. So this means that t is 4 or t is 9. But don't stop here, because my point was not to find t, my point was to find x. Now that I found t, I put it back, but this equation is super simple to solve, yes? Because I would say that if t is 4, this implies that x to the power of 2 is 4. But then what is x? Even though this is a quadratic equation, but extremely simple, x becomes plus or minus 2. Yes? And if t is 9, then x squared is 9. Then this means that x is plus or minus 3. So if I ask you, at the end, how many solutions are there for this original equation? You would say 4. Plus 2, minus 2, plus 3, minus 3. So these are the solutions. So remember, sometimes you have to use this. Remember this trick. This trick is somehow very useful in some cases. And I think now I want to wait for you a little bit more, because now you can use the same trick here to solve the problem. Yes? Let me give you a little bit more time, and then I solve it, and then the lesson for today is finished. So I give you 5 minutes. Please try to solve this one yourself.